Welcome to the Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
Hello, Patrick Donohoe here, news editor with the Irish Farmers Journal. Last Saturday, my colleague Aine Hennessy joined hundreds of victims of flooding in Athlone for a national rally on the issue. Many of them were farmers, including leading IFA representatives.
What do we want? But I want to first of all thank you people for coming out here on this miserable day. I want to thank the people since the 4th of December that have helped out their communities, that have helped out their neighbours, that have helped out their local businesses, that have helped out their local farmers up and down the country. 17 local authorities have a say on the River Shannon, but none of them have responsibility when it comes to your houses, your businesses, your farms being flooded and your livelihoods being washed away. We want, number one single authority for the waterways of our country. One single authority.
Tom Turley, Connacht Regional Chairman and Chairman of the IFA's Flood Project Team.
And why are you here today, Tom?
We're here today, I suppose, in solidarity with the people from around the country that have been caught up in a national emergency that has been the flooding, and it's happening all too often.
We have the M50 in Dublin, and when the traffic got busier on that, they put an extra lane in it. And if there's a car crash or one lane blocked in the M50, we around the rest of the country know about it. It's on the airways. And our waterways are the same. There's bushes, there's rubbish, there's silt, and there's sewer in all our rivers. And no one wants to do a damn bit about it. We want the environmental lobby group, on Tashka, all of the other groups, to get the hell out of the way. We didn't see any of them for the last 12 weeks in their vans.
My name is Emmett Durney.
And Emmett, you're a farmer from the Athlone area.
Yes.
And can you tell me how you were affected by the flooding this year?
Our land is in Clonown, which is in the eye of the storm really at the moment, and we have land that's covered with water for the last 3 months. I've got a yard full of haylage that we use and we sell every year. I haven't seen it since probably the last week in November. All roads to it are fully blocked. It's been an increasing problem because the same land maybe 15 years ago we were able to grow crops on it, and slowly over the last 15 years the flood has been coming more regularly and higher, and to the point now where there's absolutely nothing you can do with the land at this stage. You're trying to grab a few months every year to try and get maybe a foot of silage or haylage off it, and if you're lucky, and then once you have the stuff saved, if you don't get it out of there, you're probably going to lose it during the winter then.
How is it affecting your farm income?
Well, the farm income is decimated. I've taken on other work outside of the farm to try and survive, because trying to survive with the farm alone at the moment is impossible anymore. Farming in this area isn't sustainable because of this, because you can't plan. There's absolutely no grounds whatsoever to plan because you don't know what flood is going to come and when it's going to come. So farming is a challenge.
Henry Burns, I'm currently National Livestock Chairman with IFA, and I'm a presidential candidate in the present election.
And Henry, why are you here today?
I'm here to support mainly, number one, the people that have been flooded, including ourselves at home. We have a problem with a river at home in the local area, and we've been dealing with it for a while. And I think, it's only when water comes into your farmyard, or more particularly your home, that you understand the devastation that happens here. And there's a danger here, again, that this gets forgotten. We go into the summer and this gets forgotten. That can't happen.
Martin Murphy.
And Martin, where are you from?
I'm from Galway. I'm here with Galway IFI, and I have land along the River Clare in Galway, which has been flooded 4 or 5 times this year already. And it actually floods probably 2 or 3 times every year. It flows into the River Corrib. And as the speaker said there, the problem in Galway as well is that the River Corrib, the levels are too high, the silt in the rivers, and the rivers are not flowing, and they're overflowing onto the land. My land was flooded during the week. It's gone back again now. But it was flooded for a 2 or 3 week period when the floods were right bad. And then when the floods go back, the grass and all that is on it is no good, and it takes months for it to recover.
I'm Joe Healy. I'm a candidate in the IFA presidential election. I'm from Athlone in County Galway.
And Joe, why did you come here today to show your support?
Well, I came here exactly to show my support for the many, many families that's affected, not only in the farming community but across the board. And their lives are put on hold, and a lot of them were highlighted up there on the stage today. And, you know, they're fed up with people talking in forums and reports and surveys and all the millions that's been spent on them. And like we've seen even in Kinbarra, which is only up the road from where I live at home, a bit of local knowledge and expertise and a reasonably limited budget, what can be done to save many houses, families and farms.
Corey Coughlin.
And where are you from, sorry?
Kilgarvan, far from Athlone.
And tell me about how you were affected by the flooding.
Well, the land started the flooding in early November, and it started to get higher and higher. And eventually it came into the shed. The first week of December it came into one of the slatted sheds, and we had consequence. We had to move all the cattle out of that shed to a neighbouring farm. And then it continued to rise and went into our fodder. The fields of silage became flooded, and the hay sheds were flooded. The flooding relief was we got 5 tonne of meal after the Christmas of dairy ration, and then we applied for the fodder flooding crisis, which is capped. It will come to about a third of the flood damage. The price will cover about a third of what's damaged.
I'm Phelim McCarthy. I'm an IFA presidential candidate. I'm here to support the people in that Athlone Roscommon region on the flooding. I suppose there must be a solution found. It's fairly obvious. You can't have flood waters coming into people's houses and into their farmyards. And it's an easy enough problem to solve. My belief is we need a bit of drainage in the Shannon.
So what do you hope the outcome then of today?
Well, I'd hope the incoming government will see common sense, because it's the government that decides and make the decisions. We have a number of politicians here today. I would have expected more politicians on the ground here today. I'm not a local, obviously, but I would have felt with the election underway that we should be getting stronger commitments from the politicians today. And if I was in this region, and if I'm IFA president, I'd be pushing for a strong commitment from the government to deal with the scandalous situation which a lot of these farm families find themselves in.
They've announced, rightly so, 85 million for the local authorities who have their plans in place to repair the roads and the bridges and the damage that's been done by the flooding. And rightly so, 85 million. And I heard the Minister saying it's going to start immediately. Well, we want the same interest in our waterways. We want them to start immediately as the waters recede, because we as a community have said enough is enough, and they've got to start with this work, and they have to start it soon, because we, like we did in South Galway, like we did on the Shannon previously, like the guys did in Templemore, and they're going to do in Laois, and in Cavan, and in Donegal, and in Mayo, north and south, they're going to take it into their own hands, and they're going to do it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for your attention.
You're listening to the Irish Farmers Journal podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
Another group of farmers who feel left behind are those who fell through the cracks of support schemes for young farmers. Kenneth O'Brien, head of the Forgotten Farmers Group, speaks with Irish Farmers Journal farm finance specialist Peter Young at a meeting called to examine their situation.
We've just finished a meeting in Athlone Springs where 150 people turned up, including a lot of the farm organisations and a lot of politicians who committed to get behind. Kenneth, what are your thoughts after the meeting?
I suppose the one good outlook on it is, we have to look at the IFA. There's going to be a new president, and we got it from the three of them there tonight that they're fully behind it. In the election, the politicians said that they're fully behind in solving it. So look, over the next coming weeks, we're willing to work with both the farm organisations and the politicians in getting a solving of this issue and seeing where there can be money drew down. It came up there tonight that the Department of Agriculture says there could be some money left over from the National Reserve as of last year. So that looks hopeful that from different things that we may be able to get solution to the problem of collecting money for the.
And there was three different groups. We've heard from a lot of young farmers under 40 there tonight. They gave their cases. They tended to come into three different groups tonight. The ones who just missed out in 2007 on getting installation aid and they got their green cert. Farmers then who started in 2005, 2006 who have bought land and missed out as well. And then a third group which went back, and you yourself were in this from 2000 to 2002 during the reference period.
Yeah, again, you could divide it in three ways there tonight, listening to the speaker or the farmers on the floor. But I still think myself that a case-by-case basis, maybe under Pacific Disadvantage or something, would be something that would be able to accommodate for these. Because if you go putting them into groups, I know it looks like there's 3 groups, but how do you form a category that accommodates the groups then? So I think myself the simplest is a case-by-case basis. Again, that's going to be the easy task. If we get the money, we'll be able to work on that one.
And also you're looking at the TAMs, and a lot of these farmers, they're under 40 and they can't get that 60% grant rate because they've been farming more than 5 years.
Yeah, I think on that one that the Minister should look at giving every farmer under the age of 40 60% in TAMs. It came up there tonight where a lot of farmers feel that they're being discriminated because they're only getting 40%. So, I think there should be equality there for all farmers under the age of 40 getting 60%, and it would make a huge difference to the farmers to stay active and stay in the game.
And that comes under Pillar 2, so that would be co-funded as well?
Yeah, correct. That would be under Pillar 2 and co-funded. So hopefully that they can look at these things of moving it to 60% rather than 40. It would be a big help. And again, if we look outside it, in making jobs sustainable and creating jobs, it will help in all them.
So after tonight, are you more positive? Are you going to continue to fight for the forgotten farmers?
Yeah, I'm going to continue the fight. We've got the support from the IFA and also the different farm organisations, and the politicians are still there. So yes, by all means, we're going to continue. When we see who reforms the new government, we will approach it at that level. Then we have the IFA to see who's going to take over as president of the IFA, and then we'll approach there and see where we go from there by bringing all groups together to try and solve this issue.
Thanks very much, Kenneth.
Thanks, Peter.
We hope that you're enjoying this Irish Farmers Journal podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy. Find out more at farmersjournal.ie.
In this week's Irish Farmers Journal, our market specialist Phelim O'Neill has more analysis on the consequences for Irish farmers if the UK decides to leave the European Union in the upcoming Brexit referendum. He goes through the implications with our digital editor, Thomas Hubert.
After months of speculation, the UK Prime Minister David Cameron announced at the weekend that the UK would hold a referendum on EU membership on the 23rd of June. This followed, I suppose, what was described as a prolonged period of negotiation with other EU heads of state on a reform package for the UK. The Prime Minister has declared himself satisfied with this and has now set about the process of trying to persuade British voters to vote to remain as members of the European Union.
Now, there's a lot of uncertainty there. We've seen divisions within David Cameron's own party, so a possibility of a Brexit despite the Prime Minister voting against it. What would that mean, first of all, for farmers in the north, in Northern Ireland?
Yes, it's correct to say that the vote is considered to be very, very close. Any opinion polls that have been conducted to date have shown a small majority either way, so very much at this distance out it is too close to call, and it will be a very close, hard-fought campaign with very many prominent politicians advocating for a no vote to withdraw from the European Union. Turning to what impact it will have north of the border in Northern Ireland, well, I suppose first and foremost they would receive direct payments. They are direct beneficiaries of being members of the European Union. The Common Agricultural Policy makes provision for direct payment to farmers, and as well as their single farm payment, they have access to Pillar 2 rural development monies. Again, these are all ring-fenced whilst they're administered by the executive in Northern Ireland. This is all ring-fenced monies that come direct from Brussels. Now, of course, that isn't free money. The United Kingdom is a very significant contributor to the EU budget. They contribute something like £20 million annually, and part of the argument for withdrawal is the UK only receives about £10 million worth of payments back. So the belief is that there will be plenty of money left over to continue funding as it is, but again that leads then to the debate about the level of priority that agriculture and farming support will be for any new arrangement that comes into place. Whereas prior to this, payments to farmers were ring-fenced from Brussels. Future arrangements, the money will come probably through the block grant that is given to the Northern Ireland Executive by the national government in London. And then it will be a situation where the agriculture lobby has to go head to head with education, with health and various other government high spending departments to try and make sure that farmers get their share of that.
Okay, now farmers in the Republic, they're not affected directly, but this would have serious consequences for them as well.
That's correct. There's no direct impact on Republic of Ireland farmers, but the reality is, with the UK being the main export market for the wider Irish agri-food industry, never mind beef and lamb, the fact is that any UK exit will make trade with the UK that little bit more complicated. There will have to be an agreement, and it's likely, and everyone speculates, that the UK will come to some arrangement with the remaining EU member countries because both sides have an equal interest in continued trade. But in that situation, there is a process that has to be gone through. There will be a negotiation and there will be an administrative side to it. And certainly there is estimated to be a cost, a figure given by Professor Alan Matthews of Trinity College recently, put that figure at 5%, so that it would cost an additional 5% of cost to continue doing business on the same basis as we were previously. I suppose the wider threat, in recognising that half our produce, half our exports go to the UK, the scenario then might arise: what trade deals, what international trade deals might the UK embark on that would be put Irish beef in particular at a disadvantage? And we can think immediately of the EU have been in negotiation with Mercosur, the South American countries, since 1999 without actually coming to any agreement. But given the desire of the UK to develop its financial services industries in global markets, we could quite easily foresee a situation where they would agree to accept very significant quantities of South American beef in return in such a deal. In that scenario, then Irish beef exports in particular would be particularly exposed, because we would then have serious competition from other cheaper producing regions of the world. And that, I think, and I suppose in summing up on what the implications of Brexit as it's referred to, the very best case scenario is that it is minimal disruption. In truth, no one knows until it happens, until what new arrangements comes into place, because there is no scenario planning, there is no alternative proposition outlined, because the government is officially campaigning to remain inside. What we're left with in the meantime then is a period of prolonged uncertainty, and in uncertainty there is, I suppose, a damaging of confidence in the business.
That's all long-term uncertainty, but even in the short term there are already consequences, for example, on the currency.
Very much so. Since the turn of the year, whenever the subject and the possibility of a date for a referendum became newsworthy, we have observed that sterling, which traded for much of 2015 at around 70, has now moved up to 77, 78 in recent days, and it looks like it's going to continue there. So that situation will put Irish exporters at some considerable difficulty in the short term, given that, as we said earlier, 50% of our sales are to the UK, are to the sterling zone.
Okay, Phelim, thank you very much. There's analysis and coverage from you in this week's Irish Farmers Journal, and for people who might have missed your previous coverage last week, there was also a lot about this scenario and the risks for Irish farmers. It's all online in our archive at farmersjournal.ie.
The Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
We're now in the final stretch of the general election, and Irish Farmers Journal reporter Odile Evans caught up with independent candidate and farmer Michael Fitzmaurice TD at Ballinasloe Mart this week.
Michael, how's the election campaign going, first of all?
I might be able to tell you this on Saturday in a better way. We've got good feedback on the ground. People have been, very pleasant to us actually on the doors. They've expressed the problems that's in all areas, but in a good way. There's no one setting the dog after us. And in fairness to the canvas team that I have, we have a massive canvas team that has knocked on every door and gone up every by road and in the whole constituency. And look at after that, you can only put your best foot forward, sell yourself as best as you can, and let the people decide on the day.
Yeah. And what are the main issues you're meeting on the ground? You'll be familiar with them anyway. But
yeah, we'll be familiar with them. Look, with the farming situation, the cap comes up a lot on the door. Beef genomic scheme, problems with the glass tier 3 at the moment. We have a lot of problems with young farmers. A good thing to see young farmers coming into the scheme, but sadly a lot of them haven't been paid. And a lot of problems as well on partnerships, where that seems to be coming up regularly. Green Search, Board BIA, and also for the farmers in the west of Ireland, the likes of the ANC. And I think the farmer community deserve a bit of a lift up as well. Also, there's huge concern at the moment about the carcass weight going from, wants to go over 20 or 30 kilos. The cuts that's on the cattle of that size, because a lot of farmers were geared up for Charlie cattle and, say, the bigger framed cattle. And there is a lot of concern at the way factories are treating the farmers out there, and something needs to be done.
So would you be opposed to the Saini deal then? Or?
Oh yeah, I'd be very much opposed to it. I don't think. Anyway, when Michael O'Leary tried to buy Aer Lingus, the EU moved in and decided that it was not good for competition. I don't think it's good for competition, and I think the other thing we have to do is take the power out of the factories by making sure the 60,000 cattle less exported in 2015 compared to 2010. And I think we have to get into gear. The new minister needs to get out there, get working and get exports moving, for the simple reason if we don't, we are leaving it in the hands of the factories, who will kick the farmer up and down the road if they get a chance.
Would you be in favour of producer groups or producer
organisations? I've no problem with producer groups, but I think there's a question mark coming at the moment over the situations where the factories have a monopoly, or where they're gone into these feedlots, and there's huge amount of cattle, and it's actually distorting the number of cattle. They can pull out whatever they want, whenever they want, and I think it's holding the prices down. I think that we may have to look at that. We may have to bring in legislation for that, like the likes of America done, because it cannot continue that the producer of the food is the worst off. The factories and the shop and the big stores are making more out of the animal than the farmer is, and that won't work, because the farmer won't survive in them conditions.
And where do you see the future of independent politicians in the Irish government?
Well, first of all, the people out there have had 100 years of the Civil War parties. We have seen that there's a lot of problems after that 100 years. We've seen a massive recession that we're after going through. What we have done, when people are, say, the percentage on the polls of independence looks to be going up, and then with that happening, a responsibility comes on your shoulders to make sure that you turn around and you bring as like-minded independents, bring as many of them together to make sure that they work together and show how to do politics in a new way. And that's the one thing, that's the reason I've gone into the Independent Alliance, to make sure that we're working together, because one person won't win, one soldier in the army won't win the war, it's the whole army together.
So my last question then plays in with that. It said, what does the Independent Alliance offer to farmers?
Well, first of all, Michael Fitzmaurice would, as an independent and part of the Independent Alliance, I've a detailed document out in rural Ireland. CAP is part of it. I come from a farming background. I am a farmer, and I would be involved and actually been one of the forefront of questioning Mr. Coveney on the way things have been done in the Department of Agriculture, and also in the future for farming. Because if we don't put a future there, then people are going to walk off the land. We will work for the family farm. That's our motto. That's the way we do things, and that's the way we continue to do things.
Thank you. And best of luck on Saturday with the count.
Thank you.
You're listening to the Irish Farmers Journal podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
In the other election campaign, that for the top position at the head of the IFA, our exclusive RedC poll of 1,000 farmers revealed strong opinions on sensitive issues for the association. News correspondent Pat O'Toole joined me to discuss the findings on levies, presidential pay and the role of part-time farmers within the association. How many people have cancelled their levies from the IFA over the past 12 months?
A significant proportion, 1 in 5, 20% said they'd cancelled. Now there is the possibility that these people didn't just cancel their levies, because there is anecdotal evidence that there has been cancellation of membership as well, as farmers gravitate towards the IFDL that's the farmers with designated land, and the Hill and Natura farmers, which just had their first AGM last week. So the possibility is that it's not just levies, but memberships as well.
As you say, Pat, evidence up to now has been anecdotal, but your poll says, and quite clearly, that 1 in 5 have cancelled over the last 12 months. Is this going to be a worry to the IFA?
Well, it should be a worry to IFA. For two reasons. Number one, farmers are voting with their pockets, and they're telling IFA that if they want their financial support, they're going to have to work for it. They're going to have to regain trust. They're also going to have to show transparently that the money farmers are putting into IFA is being spent wisely and prudently and fairly. The other thing I think that they're saying is that there are alternatives to IFA out there, and IFA have to compete in that marketplace now with the plethora of new organisations and of course the ICSA and the ICMSA.
Pat, levies as a whole is not an insignificant aspect of the IFA's total income, some 4.7 or 5 million euro of their total income. Can IFA survive if any more than 20% pull their levies?
A third of IFA's income comes from levies. So there is a debate. I mean, all three presidential candidates are on the record as having said that the issue of whether levies should continue and can continue needs to be examined. The cancellation of levies is consistent across farm size. So 23% of farms over 60 hectares have cancelled levies. That's really bad news because those bigger farms are likely to be the ones who are paying the higher volume of levies. The issue of levies, it's twofold. Number one, are they an appropriate way of collecting money, or are IFA compromised in their activities, lobbying, protesting, whatever, especially with the beef processors, but also with co-ops, with marts, with merchants? And secondly, are farmers getting value for money through their levies? So that's a live question.
And Pat, your poll looked at not only the past but also looking to the future. How many farmers said that levies should be abolished from here on in?
A high proportion, 65%. It's 2 in 3. And if we exclude people who are not IFA members, we still have 60% of IFA members saying that levies should be abolished, which I think means that the next president is looking at a situation where currently the majority of the members want the levy scrapped.
Call it, Pat, sitting here in 12 months' time, will IFA still be drawing levies from farmers?
Probably not.
Another aspect that the poll looked at was the package considered acceptable for the next IFA president. We've seen through revelations of the Conlucy report and others, some of the presidents as much as €180,000 a year over the course of 4 years, as well as a parachute payment as such of a year's salary after they finish up their package. What are the polls saying, and what are the people who are surveyed saying with regard to what the next president should be paid?
If we look at the total poll, 3 in 5 farmers thought that between 50 and 100,000 would be appropriate. 1 in 4 thought that less than 50,000 was appropriate, with only 13% in favour of over 100,000, which is the kind of money that we know recent presidents were on. If we exclude non-IFA members and just look at what IFA's membership were saying, picture doesn't change. 59% saying between 50 and 100,000, 23% saying under 50,000, and only 14% saying in excess of 100,000, most of whom are probably hoping to become president someday.
Pat, Elaine Byrne, a corporate governance expert writing recently on farmersjournal.ie, said, but the IFA president isn't a normal farmer. They're not doing the same level of work, they're doing longer hours, they're representing, in the IFA's case, maybe in the region of 80,000 farmers right across the country. Is it fair that they should be paid a measly €20,000 when they're doing much more work than that?
I'm not suggesting that they should get €20,000. The 50 to the 100,000 range is a multiple of the average farm income. It's in line with the average income of the dairy sector in a good year, which is what farmers would aspire to. It's in excess of the average industrial wage. And it's got to be remembered that people don't run for office in IFA for the money, or they certainly shouldn't. The deputy president, the commodity chairs, if you take, say, the likes of Henry Burns or Flor McCarthy as commodity chairs, the time and effort they put in, the sacrifice away from their own farm and their own families that they make is considerable. It's comparable in many ways to what the president does. There's also a narrative that this cult of the presidency in IFA has been overcooked and that the president shouldn't dominate, that the Lucy report certainly has said that the commodities committees should regain control and autonomy of their areas of expertise. The 3 IFA candidates seem to say that as well. So when you're talking about remuneration, maybe the job spec should change as well as the pay.
And Pat, moving on to the whole debate of part-time farmers, should they allow to stand for presidency or other senior positions with the IFA? We have seen one instance, and maybe you might tell our listeners what that was, where regard an election had to essentially be restarted. Did you ask the people polled with regard to should part-time farmers be allowed? Because at the end of the day, part-time farmers pay their membership to the IFA.
In Connacht, John O'Byrne recently was the only properly nominated candidate following a protracted nominations process. And John is a postman. He had committed to take a leave of absence, but it emerged that on the day his candidacy matured, when his nomination was accepted, he was 4 days away from starting his career break. And he refused to bring forward the date of his career break because he wanted to train in a replacement. For this reason, he was excluded. There is a Rule 75 Section B in the IFA Constitution which states that candidates who want to stand for the presidency, the deputy presidency or the regional chair positions must be full-time farmers. So we've asked our farmers in a RedC poll whether they think that this is appropriate or not, and there's a resounding no. 78% of IFA members say that part-time farmers should be allowed to stand for the presidency. 83% of all farmers polled say that part-time farmers should be allowed to stand for the presidency. So it seems pretty clear that Rule 75B is not in keeping with the mentality of the farmers.
Outdated, draconian, is it destined for the bin?
I think so. I think we in the Journal would be of the opinion that let the members decide. Any candidates who are nominated into the field, and let the members decide whether their farming, whether their attitude to farming, the nature of their farm is appropriate to make them valid for high office or not.
Thank you, Pat. For more on the Irish Farmers Journal RedC poll of 1,000 farmers, you can visit farmersjournal.ie or this week's Farmers Journal.
We hope that you're enjoying this Irish Farmers Journal podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy. Find out more at farmersjournal.ie.
The National Potato Conference took place in Dublin on Tuesday. My colleague Aine Fitzgibbon spoke with Cliona Lynch of Kantar World Panel and Lorcan Burke, Potato Section Manager with Bord Bia, about the state of Ireland's domestic potato market and ideas to boost consumption.
Cliona gave a presentation on potato consumption trends. So there was some bad news for potatoes last year. Sales of fresh potatoes declined by 25% over the last decade and by as much as 1/3 between 2002 and 2014. But your presentation this morning was a little bit more reassuring.
Yeah, definitely. So we're back into positive territory. We've got value and volume growth for the potato market in the last year, and we've seen frequency actually come right back up to kind of 2008-2009 levels. So shoppers are making about 34 trips now a year to buy potatoes, which is really very positive for us.
And how do you think retailers can improve consumption of potatoes from the shelves?
Yeah, so what we've seen really hampering the retailers in terms of growth, we said frequency is up, trips are doing well, and people are actually willing to pay a higher price as well. So the factor that's left for them is volume per trip. So shoppers aren't buying as much potatoes on each trip as they used to. So that's definitely something they can still work on improving.
I suppose statistics are still a little bit below 2007, 2008 levels. Does Kantar see any kind of possibility of them improving to that level again? I mean, it's better than 2014, but it's still not at that level.
Yeah, we're definitely on an upward trend, which is great to see. There's a few different ways we can make sure that keeps going. Some of the things we highlighted today, we're looking at the younger shoppers, so pre-families on the up, which is fantastic. As those shoppers get older, hopefully they'll hold on to those habits. But we also want to look at young family, which is pretty flat over the last few years, and make sure that those busy mums, busy dads are getting potatoes into the diet, getting potatoes into the basket, because that'll really help to drive forward things as well.
And you were saying also in your presentation that the discounters like Aldi and Lidl are doing much better in terms of getting people to buy potatoes. Why do you think that is? Why is Tesco and Dunnes and SuperValu, why are they losing out?
Yeah, so Tesco, Dunnes and SuperValu have all lost potato shoppers in the last year, whereas the discounters have gained. So people are moving out of buying their potatoes with Tesco, Dunnes, SuperValu, instead picking them up in Aldi and Lidl. And you've seen really strong growth through both of those retailers. I guess in one way they have a smaller base to come from, so there's a lot of growth potential there for them. They do still undertrade in potatoes, whereas the other retailers are stronger. So they've got a lot to lose, and Aldi and Lidl are really snapping at their heels to try and gain it.
Okay, thanks very much, Cliona. So now I'm joined by Lorcan Burke, Potato Sector Manager of Bord Bia. Lorcan, there was a 1 million marketing campaign was launched last year in September to boost potato consumption and raise the image and profile of the potato due to falling consumption issues. Can you tell us a little bit more about the background to this campaign and why it was launched?
Potato consumption in Ireland has been declining steadily over the past decade. We reckon about 50% less volume per household over the decade of what one might perceive as the Celtic Tiger years. With a continued extrapolated downward trend we were faced with a market going below 100,000 tonnes by 2023 if we didn't intervene and do something. And so we talked to the potato industry, essentially the Irish Potato Federation and the IFA, and we sat down with the Department of Agriculture and decided to put in place an application to the EU for funding. And to that end, we made a successful application last year, which amounted to 50% funding for a generic campaign to drive demand for potatoes. We're trying to tell people that potatoes are healthy, give them permission to eat them again in the face of a lot of anti-carb advice out there, and that potatoes are a natural unprocessed food. They're fat-free and gluten-free. Our target audience for this campaign is 22 to 44-year-old females, and there's 33% of those ladies who believe that potatoes are fattening in themselves, but it's really what you put with potatoes are fattening. So we have decided to put in place recipes that are engineered between 300 and 500 calories to be cooked within 20-25 minutes using exciting ingredients, ethnic ingredients, but using potatoes as an ingredient, which is very, very different from its traditional use. All put up on potato.ie, which is the campaign website.
And I was talking to Cliona Lynch earlier of Kantar World Panel, and according to her presentation today, there was some good news for potatoes in the market in 2015. It was still a little bit below 2007, 2008 levels, but do you think that jump last year had a little bit to do with the campaign that began in 2015?
I feel that we have been continuously promoting potatoes in Ireland for the last, in Board Bia for the last 10 years or so. The potato.ie website was launched maybe 4 years ago. We have been getting the message out there. We've had National Potato Day there every September. We've had that ongoing in the background, but I think this is the first burst of serious money we put in behind marketing potatoes. So I think potatoes always was up on this pedestal in Ireland as being the number one carbohydrate, and there was this feeling we didn't have to promote them, but we do have to promote them. We're in open competition there with many other carbs, pasta, rice, all processed carbs.
Thanks a million, Lorcan. Best of luck with the campaign.
Thank you.
The Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
Still selling Irish food, but further afield this time. The Irish Farmers Journal agribusiness editor Owen Lowry was in Dubai this week for Gulf Food, the world's largest food trade show. There he met Ornua's marketing director for the Middle East, Kevin Friel, as well as John Spicer, its ingredient sales manager for the region.
I'm on the Irish stand with Kevin Friel, who's the marketing director for Ornua for the Middle East and North Africa. So Kevin, how has the show been so far?
The show's been excellent so far. So Gulf Food is always a really busy occasion for us for the couple of days that it's on. It's a really busy time for Ornua and for the Kerrygold brand. Like many companies, I guess the Middle East is a major focus now of growth, while the European markets obviously slowed down. So it's a major opportunity for us to meet our existing customers for Kerrygold Ornua and to meet new clients as well.
So typically, what type of products is Ornua marketing in this region?
Well, we've got branded sales in the region and then ingredients as well. So our branded products, we're most famous for Kerrygold, of course. That's butter, cheese and milk powder in many markets. And we also sell Bio, which is another offering out of one of our co-ops in Ireland, Arrivo. But increasingly there's a major focus on product development, expanding formats within natural cheese and also on the butter category.
We hear a lot that there's big growth in this area, the population expected to expand across the United Emirates and across the whole Gulf. How do you see the importance of this region for Ornua in the coming years?
Yeah, so the region is vital for the growth of our business internationally. As I mentioned, Europe, we've got a bit of a slowdown in those territories, although the brand is still very big, obviously in Germany and the UK. But the growth will come from Africa and the growth will come from the Middle East. So it's incumbent on us to build a business on behalf of the Irish industry. We see it as a major opportunity for growth. We're relatively small at the moment with the Kerrygold brand, so that's a huge opportunity for us to grow. The market itself and the region is in constant flux, and it's fairly dynamic, obviously, with the oil prices right now, but there's still big chances for premium brands like ourselves, like the Kerrygold brand, to expand internationally. There's a lot of purchase power clearly in the market, and we think there's a huge platform for growth here.
Okay. And how important is the Irish image to buyers in this region?
Yeah, so Ireland is pretty well known actually, although you may not, I suppose, consider it at first glance. So we've got a good reputation, that helps. Clearly the green image is something unique for this region. And the idea of grass-fed cows, that's very, very important as well, where you've got many domestic companies producing liquid milk from cows that are fed indoors on grain. So once the consumer understands the message about cows fed outdoors 365 days a year, more or less, on grass, that's a very unique story to tell, and that's one with Kerrygold that we tell quite well.
Okay, thanks very much, Kevin, and I wish you the best of luck.
Okay, thank you.
I'm here with John Spicer, who looks after our new ingredients in the Middle East. So when we talk about ingredients, I suppose to the ordinary farmer that's milking his cows in Ireland, what exactly is an ingredient that's selling in these regions?
Well, an ingredient really is any bulk product. So what I look after is the cheddar, butter, and all the variant milk powders in bulk format. And where that goes, it goes to a variety of places. Obviously, this part of the world has been brought up on trading, so there's an awful lot of traders. But ultimately, that product will end up in either a processor for further processing, to a repacker to repack down into smaller quantities, or to an end user, ultimately through open markets in Iraq, in Algeria. Some of the cheddar is eaten directly as cheddar. Most of it would go into cheese processing as the basis for the cheese that's eaten out here. And because of the conditions that you find out here, natural cheddar won't necessarily work because of high temperatures. And a lot of the places wouldn't have the either logistics, supply chain, or the holding capacity within retail to refrigerate.
So, John, this is going to become a critical market for us. There's going to be huge growth in the future. Obviously,
Absolutely.
We're going to be selling more and more ingredients to international markets like this. What's the mood like over the last couple of days?
The mood, I'd say, is cautious and inquisitive, trying to find out where things are going. There's probably a little lack of committal from buyers on that front, and that's completely understandable. The market, I would say, is soft. Obviously, we have mechanisms within Europe to protect farmers with intervention, but that doesn't apply outside of Europe, and we operate in the full trade winds of the global economy in this part of the world. We're not protected within Europe, and we have to deal with that, and it's a challenge, but it's a challenge we'll meet.
Okay, thanks very much, John. Thank you.
You're listening to the Irish Farmers Journal podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
The Irish Farmers Journal and Open Air Agri Careers Fair is just 1 week away, and the number of jobs up for grabs at the event next week keeps rising. Careers editor Mary Phelan answers Ciara Leahy's questions.
The fair is on next Thursday, the 3rd of March, and we have 768 jobs and counting at the fair. Yes, it's a very impressive number, and that is due to rise over coming days as the companies that are exhibiting come back to us with more details. That's just the confirmed number of jobs so far. We have 45 exhibitors, and we have 4,000 people who are registered to attend. So it's all going to be happening next Thursday at the RDS.
Amazing. Now, Mary, first of all, if you are not one of those 4,000 people that have registered, can you still get there?
Yes, all you have to do is go on to agricareers.ie and you can register for free there to attend.
Okay, brilliant. So first of all, 768 jobs. Tell me about the spectrum that's on offer.
So I guess in terms of describing the jobs that are on offer, we need to look at who exactly is exhibiting. And a lot of the exhibitors that we have are from the meat processing sector. So we have Irish Country Meats, we have Dunbia, ABP, Keepack, Slaney Foods. That's just naming some of them. We also have Teagasc and the Department of Agriculture, and this is where some of the really big job numbers come in, because the Department of Agriculture is recruiting to fill 200 positions this year, and Teagasc is also recruiting to fill another 200 positions. Wow. So there has been a huge amount of interest in those Department of Agriculture jobs. My advice is to come along on the day and speak to the department representatives, and that is as close as you can get to the finest detail about when exactly you'll be able to apply for those positions and what exactly those positions will be.
And Mary, are these jobs right across, like, are they very high level or are they right across the spectrum?
So we have, for example, 10 graduate programs that companies will be recruiting for on the day. A lot of those are in the meat processing plants. So, somebody might say, I don't know, I want to work in a meat processing plant. It's hard work, it's cold, you're working with raw meat.
It is cold.
Yeah, but a lot of those graduate programs are looking for people in sales on the commercial side of the operation. They need people in IT, they need people in marketing. You get a lot of requirements for people with business skills, or if you want to, maybe you have an ag science degree but you want to go more into the business side of things, you know, those opportunities are there and people mightn't really expect that. And then by the same token, those same exhibitors, so those same meat processing plants, are looking for people on the factory floor. So they're looking for boners, they're looking for trimmers, they're looking for general operatives. We're really trying to show with this fair that there's a huge amount of opportunity in the agricultural industry. And it's not just for people with experience farming or who have an ag science degree. The industry needs people in marketing, it needs people in IT, it needs accountants. We have IFAC exhibiting on the day. They really just employ accountants. We need engineers as well. The ag machinery manufacturers that are exhibiting, such as Dairy Master and McHale, are looking for engineers. They're really looking for IT people as well.
And Mary, it's a lot more than just jobs at the expo, right?
Oh, certainly. I should have mentioned there in terms of exhibitors that we also have educational providers there on the day. We have UCD there on the day. We have Dundalk IT. We have Tralee IT. We have Harper Adams from the UK, which is a very popular destination for people who want to study ag science, but more particularly ag engineering. So if you know somebody interested in that, Harper Adams would be a very good one to talk to. But we have a main stage of speakers that are going to be talking throughout the day. This will cover a range of topics. We have a topic called See the World, which will show how a career in ag can allow for a lot of travel. We have Corporate to Country, which will show people who are working in the city, maybe got sick of the rat race and decided to take up a job in rural Ireland. We have a slot that's focused on working in Europe. We have another slot that's specifically about meat processors and about dairy processors, another slot that's about women in ag, and a slot that you're actually participating in yourself, which is about Generation 20%. So we're trying to show people that if they are working and living in a city like Dublin, they want to buy a house but they're finding it too expensive, particularly because of the requirement now for a 20% deposit for houses that cost more than 220,000. We're trying to show that, look, we have the jobs here, the jobs are in rural Ireland, and the added bonus is that maybe you can buy a house down the country then and it's less expensive. So Ciara, I know that you're at that stage of life yourself, so you'll be able to
my input into
you'll be able to share some very interesting insights, I think.
Well, I don't know how interesting, but anyway. Anyway, Mary, the last thing I just want to ask you about, I mean, it's brilliant to hear about all these jobs and a growing industry, but the thing is, getting yourself that job can be the challenge. So for people that need advice on their CVs and their interviews, do we have information on that?
So we have some experts in this area who will be in our Career Advice Hub, which is a special area set up for this very purpose. So we have the HR manager from the Farmers Journal, Sarah Buckley, and we have Fergal O'Keefe, who is a talent consultant for LinkedIn in the EMEA region, and we also have Michelle Murphy. She is an experienced HR professional and a qualified business coach. They're going to be giving talks all throughout the day. Some of these talks include CV and cover letter preparation. Then Fergal will be talking about LinkedIn and how you can build your profile and use it for career success. Sarah then will be talking about interview preparation, and Michelle will be talking people through the career journey in general. So if you look at the website agricareers.ie, there's a schedule of talks there and you can see exactly maybe which one suits you. And I should have also mentioned that we have another area at the fair for our specialists here in the paper. So if you're interested in hearing Jack Kennedy talking about dairy at the moment, or Darren Carthy talking about sheep, or Phelim O'Neill talking about the markets, get yourself along there. It's an opportunity to kind of meet the journalists face to face.
Brilliant. So just to recap, our Agri Careers Fair is taking place next Thursday, March the 3rd in the RDS. All the details are on agricareers.ie.
That's it, Ciara.
And all the details are also in this week's Irish Country Living.
And we have a 28-page supplement giving more detail again about the fair, so don't be afraid to check that out either.
We hope that you're enjoying this Irish Farmers Journal podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy. Find out more at farmersjournal.ie.
Finally, let's hear from former Ireland rugby international John Hayes, who has a column in this week's Irish Country Living ahead of Saturday's clash with England. He talks to Joe Lenihan about his memories of games against the English.
It's really one of the away ones, because, obviously the Croke Park ones were brilliant because what they were at the occasion, but at the scoreline, especially in 07, as we kind of just, we got a big score up on them, which is something you don't often get. You might beat them, but you don't beat them by much. But I think 04 over there, when we beat them, when they were really the returning world champions, I think that really was a big day for us to beat you know, they were world champions only a couple of months at that stage, and we beat them in their own home place, and that really was a huge achievement to beat a side like that over there. Not just beating them, stopping them from doing anything, you know, that point of mentality was actually for ourselves to actually beat a team like that, and, you know, hopefully go on and win something ourselves.
Yeah, you were even, I think Roger nearly put you into the corner at one stage with a kick.
Yeah. But no, it was a good day out now.
I guess 07 was massive, and the anthems were huge in Croke Park.
There was an awareness in the players, and we had that day, that the responsibility we nearly had, like, you know, for our performers, that to win there on the day, like, you know, and all the talk beforehand about whether or not their national anthem would be respected and stuff, and our national anthem then was belted out by everybody in the stadium, like, louder than ever before, so it was a pretty special moment. It was a huge occasion, even not just a rugby match, like.
Yeah, I guess have you other highlights on the training was maybe having a rare beer with Clayton Leonard?
Oh yeah, that was been the thing. That was the first thing about him. When we beat him in 01, I played against him, like, and I'd never played against him before. And like he'd been around for years at that stage, like, you know, and he was a sort of world class prop, like, and we played him in Lansdowne Road, and we beat him, and he was a good friend of Keith Woods, like, and straight after the game he arrived into our change room with a couple of cans of Bud, I think it was, like. I sat down and cracked one open for Claw, for himself, for Woody, and for me. He just handed me one, like, and I didn't even want it, like, I just sat down and drank it because he gave it to me, like. And like he had crossed over from the amateur to the professional, like, and he had that about him, like, and he was just absolute top class bloke, like, and he's president of the RFU now and everything, like, you know, so it's great to see that. But that's the kind of fella he was, like, you know. It was just so early in my career to get to play against fellas like him, so it's just amazing, like.
The Irish Farmers Journal podcast, online at farmersjournal.ie, on the Irish Farmers Journal app, and on iTunes every Thursday. Brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.